Hello, Mama Jess here. Everything you wish your mother told you. A lot of you know that I came out of pretty much every aspect of the American culture 25 years ago because I had to learn how to grieve, to process the loss of my young husband. And what I learned that grieving really is a process of growing up, because grieving requires that you confront pain and loss and the very hard truths, and that you get into reality. So when I went through that process, I realized that very few people are going this way. Most people are given to addictions and any kind of fantasy to avoid reality. We are a culture built on it, with consumerism, the entertainment industry. Any kind of distraction is welcome to most Americans. So this became the loneliest trek of my life into reality, into learning how to grieve, into growing up, into what I would call real adulthood. So periodically, in the midst of feeling like I was living on an island in abysmal loneliness, but knowing that I had to go this way because I knew this way would bring me the peace and joy and sanity and the rest to my soul that I needed. So periodically I would run into foreigners, and I would always ask them, what do you think about America? What do you think about Americans? And I came upon a young Polish man. He was working in Santa Cruz. I met him at a church function. So I asked him, what do you think of America? What do you think of Americans? And he looked at me. Polish people think Americans are childish. He did not hesitate for one moment to even think about the question. Just, Polish people think Americans are childish. I was like, exactly. And he says, yeah, what's up with Americans' need for a biological thrill? And I thought, biological thrill? I've never heard that phrasing. And I go, oh, that's an adrenaline rush. I go, yeah, what's up with that? Why do Americans always seek out ways to get high and really burn out their nervous system? And then he concluded his answer with, Americans eat a lot of sugar. Like in Poland, only the little children eat sugar. So he's like, yeah, like, what's up with America? Like, they really are childish. And I was like, yeah, the sugar epidemic, the obesity and diabetes and all of our health problems. And people can blame it on the government and the food industry, but people really have a choice of what they put in their mouth or not. And so I was really encouraged and affirmed in what I was seeing, because when you are surrounded by people pursuing their addictions, whether they are socially acceptable, good addictions, or the negative, ugly ones, you start feeling crazy. Like, am I the only one seeing this? Like, it does seem like Americans are overgrown children. Then I ran into a man from Ghana, and I inquired with him the same question. And he said again, without any hesitation in his answer, Americans are easily offended. They're too proud to be corrected. We are like overgrown children that don't want to be disciplined or corrected or told no. And so, yeah, that's absolutely true. Then over years of inquiring with a counselor about many things, she coined the term when I was referring to my bafflement that so many elder people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s seem to be so selfish and indulgent and hedonistic. And she's like, oh yeah, old babies. I went, yes, exactly, old babies. So of course I'm not the only one seeing that we are in a flagrant childish culture. It's getting worse with each progressive generation. And we are in a bad position because of it, because you cannot have a country governed by children. But that is what is happening little by little. And as I accepted this as a fact, that indeed most older people are childish and they're not safe to inquire with about any kind of knowledge or wisdom or help, any help to get into reality, they're definitely not in reality. It also struck me that, is it possible, even though the DSM, the diagnosing mental illness, would probably not ever say this, but is it possible that when you reach a certain biological age and you still have your child mind, would it be considered insanity when you're still operating like a child when you're older? My answer is yes, I do believe so. So not only are we childish, childishness when you are older it either makes you insane or you just look like you're crazy. And people don't want to inquire with you about anything about wisdom because you're a wreck. So I was, when we think about little kids, let's say a 4-year-old who wants to dress up in their Star Wars outfit and play with their lightsaber and war their buddy or their sibling with their lightsaber, that is appropriate and it's kind of cute and playful. Like, go play and play Star Wars and be in your imaginative la la land. But while I was working at an alteration shop, we had a group of older people come in who wanted us to make Star Wars suits for them because they attend some kind of Star Wars conference and everyone dresses up. Now, I'm always cringing on this job because I have to be given the tiniest little G-string, bathing suits to fix and god-awful negligee that clearly is what they think is appropriate just to wear just around town. It's I don't want to even touch these clothes. I don't want to support, recreating them or fixing them so people can wear stuff like this in society. But it was especially hard for me to be making these Star Wars outfits for these grown people. Really? Our country's in a state of emergency. There are young people dying, body, soul, and spirit. They're drowning in a meaningless modern life. Drugs and alcohol and every kind of addiction, they're clearly incapable of dealing with reality and they're overwhelmed with their pain. Suicide is becoming more common. So I thought, wow, this is what older people are doing with their time. Well, we're in a state of emergency with the young people. I go, this has to be a degree, this is insanity. And I heard it years ago, I'm sure you've heard this before. It's a great little illustration that there are people polishing the brass on the Titanic while it is going down. There are people swirling their margaritas, their martinis, whatever was on the Titanic. Just, what a beautiful day, and we're having a great time partying, and we're in our great outfits, and we're having a good time. And the ship is going down. And I would think it would be reasonable that there's an element of insanity, a reluctance to enter reality. If you have people running around the ship going, it's on fire, we're sinking, get the lifeboats. And they're just you're so negative. You got such bad energy, you got such negative vibes. I mean, I've been told this so many times, that you're just so negative, Jessica. It's I'm trying to address that the ship is sinking. And so I basically concluded, I'm saying all this to say that if an adult is operating with a child mind in a fantasy land while the ship is sinking, I am calling that insanity. I don't care what the DSM says. I don't care what professionals say. This is insanity. And this is what is going on in our country. I'm always astonished when I come upon a much older person. I'm talking 80s, 90s. And they're still so into their favorite movies. They're into their favorite video games. They're buying Amazon Prime things that they don't need, that they hoard around the house in their clutterbug house because they're too lazy to clean anything, while the ship is sinking. And I'll hear excuses like, oh no, this movie's so great, it's so inspiring, it's so wonderful. I'm like, inspiring for what? You don't do anything. For all your movies, you never do anything inspiring. Or no, these video games, they're really great because they help keep my mind sharp. Like, well, your mind is not aware of what's going on. Your mind is not actively trying to help anybody or anything. You just keep your mind sharp to go watch your stupid movies and to buy Amazon Prime. Right? That's not helping anybody. You're not investing your golden years in passing down any wisdom to the young people. To me, this is insanity. And it's important to me that we call it what it is. Because euphemisms always dominate a culture, a civilization that is collapsing. Because people they just don't want to talk about it. Right? Everything's fine. The kids are great. Look, the kids are playing soccer. We're all having a good time. It's like, yeah, but the ship is sinking. The ship is sinking. And if you say so, you are now the villain in this fantasy land. You know, we've got older people that are owning it, saying, yeah, we love Disneyland nostalgia and we're going to go to Disneyland. And yeah, it's a mental illness and I can't deal with reality, but I'm good with that. So now we have people that are claiming it. Yeah, indeed, we're mentally ill. We're insane. We can't be in reality, but it's okay. We're fine with that. So I'm addressing this, that we are in a crisis and we do need to acknowledge that there is no process or any kind of rites of passage of growing up in this country. And we desperately need to. We need to grow up, because if we don't, we will be a bunch of people swirling martinis on the Titanic while we are sinking. And there will be a handful of people who I call the people, they're in reality. They're like the party reality, and then you have the party unreality. I know there's a lot of warring between the right and the left, and the right, Republican conservative, will probably say that we are the more mature party. We are more in reality, unlike the woke agenda that is confused about whether a boy is a boy or a girl is a girl, and drag queen story hour and all this transgender. And yeah, that's good and well. That's right. There are some truths that we could argue in that, but I'm still looking at the fact that the majority of Americans I know are obsessed with their movies. They're obsessed with their phones. They're addicted to something, whether it's good or bad. They're even addicted to their children and their children's sports. And to me, an addiction is anything that you are using to avoid reality. And it's everywhere. It is rampant. So if you're wanting to go the way of growing up and being in reality, it is a lonely way. And even if you get away from some of the heavier type of addictions like alcoholism and drug addiction and heavy pornography addiction, whatever it might be, there's still thousands of socially acceptable addictions. And being in various shadows of fantasy are completely acceptable to most adults. So how do I wrap this up? I'm basically saying we need to call this what it is. We can continue to say America is a childish culture, and that isn't enough, apparently, to make people wake up. But if we were really open to the fact, if someone said, you know what, you're really just insane. You're behaving like an insane person. You're crazy. You're nuts. Americans are nuts. You're a nut job. Sadly, then you have a bunch of Disneyland adults that are good with it. Like, we're avoiding pain. We can't deal with it. It's okay. I don't really have the answers at that point, but I do think that anyone who's following along with me, at least we can really begin to acknowledge what's going on. That we're dealing with insane people. And in order to protect ourselves, rather than just go, oh, they're immature, they're childish, they're just an old baby, to really look at it, we're dealing with people who are obstinate and hard-hearted or stiff-necked rather, and they are reluctant. They're fighting against reality. They don't want to be in it, and they'll fight you. So if you're wanting to go this way of reality, of truth, and of real adulthood, you need to acknowledge what you're dealing with, have an accurate assessment so that you don't fall into the trap of believing anything they say, because you will get hung up in it and ensnared and live in a state of confusion and doubt. Like maybe I should be watching more movies, and maybe video games for all age people all the time is okay because it's helping their mental acuity, and maybe, right, while the ship is sinking. Right, so if you see the ship is sinking and you know that you need to get off of the ship, this insane ship, this sinking, collapsing ship governed by crazy people who are not aware that it's sinking, and they're just talking, no, everything's fine, we're fine. Like, you really need to not listen to them and get off the ship and acknowledge it for what it is. Because the doubt, the confusion will make you crazy being around these infantile, self-centered, crazy people. All right. This is Mama Jess. Do everything you can in your power today to get into a greater degree of reality. It takes a while. It is not easy. I'm going to be starting a series of rites of passage. These are all the things I did to get out of the fantasy lands that I was in and that everyone around me was in. And just know it will be a lonely way, but we're not alone. There are a lot of people waking up to what's going on. And there have been foreigners who have been watching us for some time. I'm sure they've got their guilt and they've got their fantasies they're in, but I think we Americans have a real gross issue because of the wealth of this country, the decadence that allows us to live in la-la lands, and some taxpayer somewhere is picking up the bill, and it's unacceptable. All right, thank you for your time, and please join me on my series of rites of passage. I'll talk with you soon. Bye-bye.